1. This happened 10 years ago, but I still think about it from time to time. The plot might not be that crazy, but at the time it was a real victory for me. Background. I, then a nearly 18-year-old woman, went shopping for a dress for my senior prom with my best friend. We decided to get the same dress in different colors to match. I now recognize this is cringy, but we were 18. It was a one-shoulder mermaid-style dress. I showed my mom the dress when I got home without actually putting it on, and I don't remember her having any sort of reaction, positive or negative. The skirt needed to be hemmed, so my mom said she would take me to her friend who does tailoring. We went to the tailoring appointment a few days later, and on the way home, I could tell she was angry. She told me that she was ashamed to be seen with me in the dress and that I had shamed her in front of her friend. I was totally blindsided because I hadn't thought of the dress as in any way scandalous, and my mom is not usually overly conservative. The dress was figure-hugging, but there were no cutouts, and it was absolutely a typical prom dress, not something that would draw special attention. She didn't forbid me from wearing it or even offer to get me something else. She just acted disappointed, and I felt like there was nothing I could do about it. I cried for a little while, but then came up with a plan. Revenge. I put the dress on Facebook Marketplace and sold it a few days later without my parents' knowledge. I did the exchange in a shopping center parking lot near my house. I didn't give a stranger my parents' address without telling them, don't worry. I got about 2/3 of my money back. I told my best friend about my plan, and she understood, even though it ruined our plans to match. The weekend before the prom, I had my boyfriend drive me to a mall where there was a pop-up tuxedo rental shop, and I rented a women's tuxedo and bought cheap shoes to go with it. I had a driver's license to use for ID, even though I didn't have a car. I brought my stuff home and stashed it in my closet. The day of the prom, I had my boyfriend and some friends over at my house to get ready. I hid myself from my mom while getting ready, and when everyone walked out into the yard where my mom was waiting to take pictures, I walked out last in my tux. The look on her face was incredible. She is rather homophobic and generally critical of gender non-conforming clothing, so I knew she wouldn't approve. She clearly didn't want to say anything in front of my friends, so she pulled me aside before we left, and I told her something like, "I know you didn't approve of my dress, so I decided to wear something a little more modest." I told her I'd sold the dress and gave her some money to cover the alterations, even though I think she had gotten them for free from her friend, and then turned around and walked out. We have never talked about this incident. My boyfriend's dad drove me home, and my parents were already asleep when I got there, so there was no awkward ride back. But I think my mom treated me with more respect ever after. 2. This happened while I was taking a biology lab class. More than halfway in the semester, a new student, Morgan, joins my partner and I in our group, as we are discussing plans for our final project. By this point, they had missed 3 lab assignments and practical marks. The same day before dismissal, we were supposed to discuss plans for our final project. Morgan went to our lab TA and told them the objective of our experiment without having a proper discussion with my partner and I, who had been discussing plans prior to their arrival. Their suggestion was inhumane, cutting off parts of an animal for regenerative studies, and wasn't allowed in our course. This was stated clearly on our manual, but they didn't know because they didn't have a manual, which is a requirement. A week goes by and I've heard nothing from Morgan. Throughout this time, I've been contacting my partner, asking if they've heard anything from him. But they said no. So I had to find their contact info in our class list and email them about our outline for the experiment. They had contributed nothing to the planning of the experiment, but I brushed it off as our marks really came from our presentation. After our actual experiment, we needed to create a slideshow and record. A few days before the deadline, I messaged them if we could record the day of the deadline. This meant that we needed to create the slideshows and organize the data beforehand. However, only my partner replied. A few hours before the deadline, my partner and I decided to split up Morgan's portion as they had not replied to our messages. They had chosen to work on the more significant portion of the work, except they didn't do jack. So my partner and I finished the sides, and as we were about to record, we saw Morgan typing on the shared Google Doc. They apologized, saying their phone had gotten ran over so they couldn't type, but could see all our messages. So why couldn't they email us, contact the TA, worked on their portion of the presentation? Morgan didn't even bother opening the PowerPoint we had shared with them. Oh, I forgot to mention, we had 2 weeks to work on this presentation. After my partner and I recorded the presentation, I went to the Google Doc to see Morgan had typed that they could still record from their tablet. And present work they didn't do? Nope, not happening. Following this, I took the matter to the higher-ups, giving all of the evidence, timestamps, history of the edited document, and text receipts. I think it says enough that their only edit to the document was their apology. And guess what? The presentation was only worth 5%, but to Morgan, who had missed out on a majority of the past assignments, who knows how much it was worth. I had not seen Morgan in following labs or the practical exam. Our TA only acknowledged my partner and I in our feedback, and we ended with a grade of 97. 3. So I work at Amazon, in a delivery station. Basically, we sort the packages to the different routes for the drivers to deliver them. Part of this process is called pick to buffer. You're assigned to a different letter cluster and a set of aisles, and you take the packages off the conveyor belt so they can be stowed in the proper area. As an example, I was assigned to Cluster E, aisles 27 to 30 this morning. Part of being at the end of a cluster is collecting what we call blow-by. It's basically all the packages that get missed by the pickers. Whoever is at the end of the cluster not only has to pick for their assigned aisles, they also collect all the unpicked packages, so they can be returned to the dock and come through again, where, hopefully, the assigned picker can grab them. Usually when things go to blow-by, it's because the picker didn't see the package, it's on the wrong aisle, or the stow rack is full. So this morning I was on blow-by duty. Which was fine at first until I started noticing the packages that were coming through. Most of them were supposed to be stowed on aisles 13 to 20. At one point, I started to realize that I had been handling some of the packages 3, even 4 times. I know that I'd had these packages before because I'd been the one to retape some of the ones that had accidentally ripped open. So I started to look for the culprit. John. Since we started this morning at 1:20 a.m., John had been yammering non-stop about Lord knows what, and he had his back to the conveyor belt half the time, which is a big no-no. When he did manage to grab one of his assigned packages, he took his sweet time putting it where it needed to be. It wasn't like his racks were full. They were never more than half full. So he was just ignoring the packages he was responsible for. Eventually, I decided enough was enough. I grabbed an empty stow bag, they're the size of IKEA bags, measuring about 24 by 22 by 30, and started filling it with his missed packages. The bag overflowed. So then I grabbed one of the bins for the bubble mailers, about 18 inches by 28 by 20, and filled it with more of his missed packages. But that wasn't enough, so I grabbed 2 more bubble mailer bins and filled those. I then pushed all 3 bins as well as the stow bag over to where John was yakking away. When he saw me with all the bins, he smiled and started to thank me, but I stopped him. I said, "This isn't me being nice, this is me being petty. I have my own job to do. Your mom might clean up after you, but I sure as hell don't." I didn't see his reaction because, as I'd said, I had my own job to do. It might seem like I was being nice, but any seasoned Amazon associate who works sortation knows that letting things pile up is your worst nightmare, because the stream of packages doesn't stop until around 8:30. For a little more context, almost 60,000 packages came through the warehouse this morning alone, and that's pretty standard for the most part. During the holiday season, we're moving at least 90,000 a day. So not only did John have to put away all the stuff I brought him, he had to continue picking until everything got put away. On a typical day, pickers can get to break by 8:35, and are expected to be back on the floor by 8:50. John didn't get to go to break until 8:45. 4. This happened in the early 2010s, before the advancement of technology in video editing and content creation. I was hired as a content creator for a university that wanted to leverage YouTube to kickstart their branding campaign. The pay was low, roughly $2,200 USD, and in those days, there were not that many video content creators around, and the process usually took a long time from start to finish. I was hired, and on my second day, my manager presented my KPI of 85 3 to 10 minute videos in 52 weeks, which was impossible for a one-man team in those days. This meant I had to do the scripting, producing, casting talents, shooting videos, composing music. They were too cheap to pay for a royalty-free music subscription, and editing, all of which I had to use my own equipment and software because their cameras and computers were so old. They simply couldn't handle the strain of even doing things in 720p, much less 1080p. I tried to let my manager know, but she just smiled encouragingly, telling me to give it a try, assuring me if the videos were good, the quantity would not be what she focused on. Hearing this, I agreed to give it a try. My manager treated me well in the first month. However, one day when she found out I was a smoker, her attitude changed overnight. A colleague had actually done a facepalm when I told her about it, and she let me know that the manager hated smokers and often advocated to get them fired. She started nitpicking me on everything, from smelling like cigarette smoke after my breaks, coming in 5 to 10 minutes late despite doing more than 4 hours of overtime daily, not being contactable during break times. The list goes on. But I soldiered on because I just wanted to do the work and do it well. 5 months in, I was called into the director's office where I saw my manager putting on her best displeased but gleeful face, and I felt my stomach drop. The director told me that she was disappointed because she had heard that I was falling behind on my work, and it was already halfway through the year and I had only completed 30 out of my 85 videos. I tried to explain that I had been working my butt off in these videos. I literally worked 6 days out of the week, over 60 hours just to do what needed to be done, and that being a one-man army made things impossible. And also the fact that the videos I had put up grossed the highest ever views on their YouTube page. I also recounted how my manager said that she was looking for quality videos over quantity. The director dismissed this and stated that the KPI was simply 85 videos in a year, and since it was almost half a year in with my numbers at less than half, she felt it prudent to cut the cord early. I asked how they would even meet the KPI if they were to fire me. Now my manager snorted, saying, "We'll find a professional production house to finish your work." The director had given her an odd look, but nodded in her support nonetheless, telling me, "You don't need to worry. Manager will get the job done." That was when a light bulb went off in my head. Seeing as I was a content professional in the office, one of my jobs was to keep a database of production houses to use in the event we needed to do a shoot that required more resources. And I was sure that they would be using the production houses in my database, as my manager had no contacts in the production industry. So I changed the contact numbers and messed up all the emails on one of the entries except for one. The one, I had a friend working as a junior director, not as an assistant director, but as a director assigned to smaller video projects. I gave him a call and told him of my plan, and sure enough, within 2 days they were called to come in to pitch. I told him that I had a plan that was a win-win for us. I would instantly help him and put him on the fast track to a director position by bringing in that much business to his production house, and it would also benefit me financially. I would teach him exactly how to pitch to win over the boss and the director, and in turn, his company would pay me a standard finder's fee of 15%. He agreed instantly and immediately put me on the line with his general manager, who, upon realizing this was to be 6 months of work for a high 6-digit payout, instantly agreed and drew up a contract. As it turns out, after I gave them a metaphorical step-by-step playbook, they were the perfect fit. Somehow understanding the needs and the style of the university as well as the sort of themes the university wanted to feature. The director and my former boss were amazed that my friend's production house was so familiar with their content that they signed them up on the spot. Now, even back then, using a production house was not cheap. Each video that they produced could cost double to triple my monthly salary, given that they had specialized people for each function, producer, director, director of photography, gaffer, sound person, video editor, assistant director, production assistants, etc. But this meant that they could complete a video every 2 or 3 days. So yes, they produced 50 videos in the span of 4 months, for over 100 months of my salary, and I sat back and collected a healthy 15%, which was about 15 months of my salary. This allowed me to put money aside for a holiday and the rest to further my studies with a respected film school overseas. I thought my plan had ended here and I had gotten back at my former bosses, but, to my surprise, I received a call from my former colleague while I was holidaying in Bali one day. This was the same colleague who had facepalmed when I told her that my manager had found out that I was a smoker. She told me that my former manager had been fired, and my director given a massive blasting by the chancellor of the university. The content creation project, which I was hired for, was only given a budget equating to about 1.5 years of my salary, and they had exceeded that budget by over 10 times. My former manager was so desperate to ensure that her content creation project could be completed that she had thrown caution to the wind, paying anything to get the job done so that she could show my director that she had completed the project, and had approved the massive spend without getting consent from the director. So that is how I got my friend a super fast promotion to a full director in his production house, and 1 year of pay after getting unfairly fired from my job. 5. So I work for a company that you really have to try to get fired from. My boss and I had a great relationship until one event. He sent me and a coworker out on a road call, prior to a very important union voting meeting, which he knew about. Also, my coworker brought up at the job briefing. He gave us the go-ahead to go to the meeting before the road call. Long story short, upper management found out about the 1-hour delay before we made it to the road call. I, being me, owed up to going to the meeting during the investigation. My coworker and my former boss blamed everyone under the sun. Still got 30 demerits, you need 60 to get fired. My union rep said we would have got none if my coworker during his meeting would have just followed his advice and agreed to owning up to his mistake. But he went on an hour tirade and messed everything up. Anyways, me and my coworker got screwed. My former supervisor got delayed a literal month before getting promoted to assistant manager, which he held over me until he got fired. I never understood why he blamed me. I never threw him under the bus, but my coworker did. And he, the supervisor, threw me under the bus during the investigation. My coworker even admitted to him later on that I took full responsibility for the delay, and he threw the supervisor under the bus, but he didn't care. Apparently, I was the reason he took the 1-month delay on getting a promotion. He targeted me for everything, but thanks to all my Reddit reading, I started recording everything. My company's coveralls have great front pockets that lets the cell phone sit perfectly for recording. I recorded a job briefing that he called everyone racists, he's Middle Eastern, over a rumor that he hired his wife's cousin's company over the company's listed contractors, which was true, and he got demoted for. I hadn't submitted the video, he got demoted of his own accord for the breach of ethics. As a supervisor, he harassed me all the time. He gave me the worst jobs, followed me everywhere, wrote me up for everything and anything. I noted everything, recorded what I could, and submitted it to my union rep, which I found out afterward was one of his best friends, so the targeting and the write-ups got worse. Luckily, on one particular day I recorded a job briefing. Another coworker filed a harassment claim against him. It was that coworker's day off, and this terrible supervisor decided, during the job briefing, to go on a tirade about the harassment claim, and that he'll go out of his way to get this person fired, or make them quit. I held on to this video because I know my company needed more to get rid of him. I didn't wait long. I found out again that he was under investigation for breach of ethics and apparently fraud from when he was an assistant manager. One of my managers told me he'll probably keep his job and just get an unpaid suspension. At this point I knew I had him, so I not only sent the videos, but I also sent my harassment complaints to HR and the union president, not including my union rep in the emails. My supervisor took 6 months of stress leave before getting fired, got no charges put against him for fraud, and my company is weak as hell. My union rep got booted off the council and filed a harassment claim because all the union members called him a rat and a management suck-up. Many posters and stickers float around our shop with his pic on his knees in front of the former supervisor and manager. Wish I had the Photoshop skills for that, but it wasn't me. The company actually brought in the police to take fingerprints, but the new union rep stepped in and shut that down. It's been a year since everything went down. Found out it was another supervisor's wife that made the posters and stickers. Apparently she went to high school with the former union rep and hated him from then. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 359. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please hit the like button and share the video with friends and family. If you'd like to get early access to the videos, get that by supporting me on my Patreon page for as little as $1 or more a month. Do that by clicking on the link in the description. You'll also find a link there to the Hellfreezer merchandise store on Teespring, as well as a link to the Hellfreezer Discord. And if you really liked today's video and you'd like to leave a tip for that, do that by clicking on the heart with the $sign underneath. Okay, that's me done talking about money now. I'll move on to something else. Such as Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question actually comes from Shigar. Which is better, vanilla, chocolate, or tapioca pudding? Of course, the correct answer is chocolate, or toffee, like caramel, that sort of thing. Maybe a bit of strawberry would be nice. But generally speaking, I'm going with the chocolate. Oh, chocolate and caramel. I'm making myself hungry. Let me know what you think in a comment below. Other puddings are, of course, available. And before we go, we'll have the answer of the day from a previous video. And this is from Revenge is Ice Cream 357, and it was whether you'd like angel wings or panther legs. I think most people went for the angel wings, because, you know, flying, good. And today's answer comes from Tater with Glasses. Wings, if I don't have to pay for a car, then that would save me a lot of money. Thank you very much for your answer, Tater with Glasses. And with that, I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.